Since he was a boy, 17-year-old Trayvon Martin wanted to play football and become a pilot. The high school junior was visiting family in this predominantly white, gated townhome community 10 days ago. Around sunset, he was walking from a nearby convenience store with a bag of Skittles and an iced tea. Neighborhood watch leader George Zimmerman called police to report a suspicious black man. Before police arrived, Zimmerman confronted the teenager, and during a scuffle, Zimmerman shot him in the chest, killing him.
We just don't understand why the Sanford Police Department is really sitting on their hands on this.
Sanford police questioned Zimmerman, who has a concealed weapons permit, but he was never arrested. Chief Bill Lee said the investigation is ongoing, but Zimmerman has been cooperative and claims it was self-defense, even though Martin didn't have a weapon.
Does the confrontation alone give him a reason, a justifiable reason to shoot and kill a 17-year-old boy?
Well, it depends on the facts and circumstances.
Trayvon Martin, a 17-year-old kid, had Skittles. No way you can say self-defense.
The family's attorney wants to hear the 911 call Zimmerman made, but Sanford police won't release it. The chief confirmed dispatchers did tell Zimmerman to stay away from the teenager because police were on the way.
If your son had been white, do you think he would have been shot and killed that day?
No, I don't think
Hello
so.
again, brothers and sisters, and welcome to Israel Teach. What you just witnessed is a case that has taken the nation by storm. The Trayvon Martin case, where a 17-year-old boy coming home from a convenience store was followed by a grown man with a license to carry a weapon, was gunned down for no apparent reason but for being black, which made him suspicious. He had committed no crime, he hadn't done anything, and he was gunned down in the street. Now let me say first and foremost that my heart goes out to the family. It really does. And the sad part is that this Trayvon Martin case is simply a tip of an iceberg. This type of thing is going on all over the country. Where you have the elderly man in White Plains, New York, who, when his medical alert button was hit inadvertently, the police responded. And instead of handling this situation appropriately, they broke down his door and shot him. You have the sister who was homeless who went to the hospital because of aching legs. And she would not leave the hospital because she was in so much pain. The police took her from the hospital, then took her to jail where she died in a prison cell. All people, so-called African Americans. See, one thing this shows us, and it's evident in the Trayvon Martin case, because you have thousands of people who are protesting for justice. And it shows us in all this marching that we have no power. We have no power. It shows our impotence. And brothers and sisters, we really need to start asking the right questions. What's the right question? The question is, how did we get in this situation in the first place? How did we end up on the bottom rung of the societal ladder? How is it that we are economically inept? How is it that we are politically destroyed? How is it that we are being miseducated in these killing fields we call schools? How is it that there is cultural genocide amongst us? How is it that the black male image has been destroyed? How is it that our children can get gunned down in the street like dogs and nobody cares? It really shows us the value for black life. That's what it shows us. But how did we get in this situation? Where do we look for answers? I'm going to tell you, brothers and sisters, and I'm going to be candid with you. The answers are not with these so-called self-appointed leaders that we have, who jump on situations like leeches in order to make a few dollars. See, civil rights, and you can make a lot of money dealing with this, but the problem is that the peoples are still in the same condition. We've marched, we've protested, we've tried to integrate, which has really been an amalgamation because we didn't integrate on equal terms. We are a square peg trying to fit in a circle. We do not fit. Now you have to again ask the right question. How did we get in this situation where we are powerless in the lands of our enemies? You have to think about it. Our white people truly superior to us? How is it that they do these things to us? And this is not about them. This is about us. Because, brothers and sisters, we are not inferior. But rather, we are in a peculiar position. We are a peculiar people who have been cursed by God. Now, if you've never heard this may seem strange or odd. What do you mean we've been cursed by God? See, the only reason why we're in the position that we are in today, captives in a strange land, the descendants of slaves, is because of our disobedience to our God. Brothers and sisters, we are the people of the book, the Holy Bible, the scriptures. And the scriptures tell us that the children of Israel would be taken into slavery. And they would be prey to their enemies. See, we are the people of the book. And the answer lies not in marching, not in political empowerment, not in voting, not in taking up $25,000 bounties on this man's head that killed this young boy. That's not the answer. Rather, the answer is tapping into that true power source of this whole earth, which is none other than God. The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is our God. We are the children of Israel, and these things will continue to happen to us until we turn back to God. And that's shown through the scriptures. But first, let's identify us. Because some will think, especially those that have gone to church their entire lives, that this is some erroneous position that I'm taking, that we are the children of Israel. Well, it's clear as day in the book, because we are the ones who fit the description of the children of Israel. We are the ones who fit the description where it says you would be cursed. We are experiencing these curses. Not the people who call themselves Israelis today. That's just the bottom line. So let's look at the scriptures. Let's look at the scriptures and find ourselves within the scriptures. And when finding ourselves in the scriptures, we can find a solution to our problem. See, Trayvon Martin is a symptom. He's a symptom. Police brutality is a symptom. Economic disempowerment is a symptom. Political disempowerment is a symptom. Self-hate is a symptom. Sickness and disease is a symptom. Segregation and Jim Crow was a symptom. And slavery, how we were packed on ships like sardines in a can and brought to strange lands to work for free and build nations, just like we did when we were in Egypt, is a symptom of our disobedience to God. It is a consequence of our non-adherence to His word. So let's start off in Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter, because here Moses outlines what would happen to the children of Israel even before they went into the promised land of Canaan. This is Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter, and the 15th verse. It reads, "But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all His commandments and His statutes which I command you this day, that all these curses shall overtake thee, shall come upon thee and overtake thee." See, we are a cursed people, brothers and sisters. That's why when you move in the neighborhood, you see for sale signs going up. Everybody wants to leave. People understand there's something wrong with you, even if they can't put their finger on it. There is indeed something wrong with us. We are not inferior, but rather we have sinned against our God. See, He told us, you will be cursed if you do not hearken unto the voice of the Lord. And we did not hearken. Our forefathers did not hearken. And thus they were kicked out of that promised land. And they went into Africa. After the siege in 70 AD, when Titus came and the Romans came and besieged Jerusalem and kicked Israel out. They kicked them out of the land. They took them into slavery and they crucified them. Many of them. Jesus wasn't the only one to be crucified. Okay. And those that escaped, that were not sold or killed or died in the famine, in the siege, they went into Africa and settled amongst the Hamitic nations as strangers. And when the transatlantic slave trade came, they were more susceptible to being sold as slaves. Thus, we were put on ships and taken to these lands. But we're going to get to that. So it says, you're going to be cursed if you don't hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God. It said, cursed shalt thou be in the city, and cursed shalt thou be in the field. You ever notice, brothers and sisters, that regardless of wherever we're at, we're cursed? Many of us, when we were in the deep south, picking cotton as sharecroppers, we were exploited by the owners of the plantation because it was just another form of slavery. Many of us, if we didn't have a job, particularly the males, if we didn't have a job on some plantation, we were arrested for vagrancy and treated as slaves to work off fines that were unjustly placed upon us. This is what happened to us. This is what happened to us in the South, in the states of Georgia and Alabama and Mississippi. So when many of us decided to go up north looking for opportunity, what did we find? We found more oppression in these cities. You found it in Harlem. You found it in Chicago. You found it in Detroit, where they will remind you day after day that you were still a nigger. See, this is what happened to us. Cursed were we in the city and in the field. It says, cursed shall be thy basket and thy store. See, this is why we're in the economic situation that we're in. This is why whites have 20 times more wealth than blacks today. This is why when in 1865, as a so-called African American had 0.5% of the nation's wealth, and currently we have approximately 0.5% of the nation's wealth, because your basket has been cursed. It says, cursed shall be the fruit of thy body, and the fruit of thy land, the increase of thy kind, and the flocks of thy sheep. So what is supposed to bring you prosperity, all that you have, and your children is cursed. Look at our children. Look at graduation rates in our community. Look at the youth violence in our community. Look at the single parent homes that are bringing up children that are being conditioned to go to prison. Who fills the youth prisons today? It's our children. Who are getting killed in the streets? Our children. Who are being miseducated? Our children. Who are not graduating at rates of 50%? Our children. That's our children. Who, if you look at our children, the future looks bleak. But it is not their fault. They have not been taught, but it's all a consequence of sin. So it says, some more curses that will come upon us. Let's go down to verse 25. It says, the Lord shall cause thee to be smitten before thine enemies. Thou shalt go out one way against them, and flee 7 ways before them, and shalt be removed into all the kingdoms of the earth. So he says, once your enemies come upon you, you shall go out one way and flee 7 ways, because he is the true power. He is the one that was to fight our battles. But in order for him to fight our battles, we must be obedient to him. Otherwise, he fights against us. He fights against us. See, in this relationship with God, it is reciprocal. He shows love to us. We must show love to him. And we show love by keeping the commandments. Even Jesus, when he came in the flesh, said, if you love me, keep my commandments. See, but you have these Uncle Tom preachers, these false prophets, who spew lies to people to get in their pocketbooks, will not tell you of your identity, will not tell you of the truth of God's word. Thus, not only do they make you broke, they lead you down the path of eternal damnation. This is what they're doing. And I call them what they are. I call them what they are. I'm very candid today because we are in a critical situation. We are in a critical situation. Spiritually, we are the dry bones in the valley. So it says, the Lord shall cause thee to be smitten before thine enemies. You will be destroyed. Thou shalt go out one way against them and flee 7 ways. And then you shall be removed into all the kingdoms of the earth. Captivity will be your end. And that is why you are sitting in America, a so-called African American. That's why you're sitting there. That's why you're sitting there, cannot figure out what is the problem. Why can't I get ahead? Yes, they hold these tokens up. You have your Tiger Woods, your Oprah Winfrey's. You have those that have so-called quote-unquote made it, but the masses of our people are in the same condition that we have been in since we came to this country, a slave. If you deny that you are a slave, look at your condition. In debt, have no land, have no culture, or what's been given to you has never been given back because you have never went home. You don't even know what it feels like to truly be free. Mental slaves, self-hatred. You see all of this with our people. You see all of it with our people. And no power. See, this case, that's why I said it really touched me, because it is an exhibition of our powerlessness. We are powerless as a people. We are powerless as a people. Anytime when you make a show like that where 30,000 people have to come together just so a man can get arrested for something that is obvious, shows that we are powerless. And what are we really going to do? Nothing. Nothing. You march and then you go home. Stop marching. You say, well, you have so religious or civil rights leaders coming out of the woodworks talking about this shows that we need to make sure we vote. This has nothing to do with vote. And your answer is not marching, nor is it taking up arms, because if you take up arms and fight this battle, you will be destroyed. That's just the bottom line. You are in no position to do it. But that's not the answer anyway. The answer is dealing with who put us in this position, and it wasn't the white man. It was not the white man. It was not the European. It was not the Caucasian. Yes, God used the Caucasian as a hammer to beat us as a nail, to beat us down to the ground, to decimate us. Because we refused to be obedient, we did not hearken unto the voice of the Lord. And he said we would be removed into all the nations of the earth. Let's find out what would happen to us when we went in these nations. And I want you to think about it. I want you to see yourself in the scriptures and ask yourself, did this happen to my forefathers? It says in verse 28, the Lord shall smite thee with madness and blindness and astonishment of heart. And thou shalt grope as noonday, as the blind gropeth in darkness. And thou shalt not prosper in thy ways, and thou shalt be only oppressed and spoiled evermore, and no man shall save thee. See, this is what's happened to us. We have been exploited and oppressed perpetually since we set foot, since the Spanish brought us here to Florida, since we came to Jamestown. Even until 2012, it has been a consistent program of exploitation and oppression, destruction and slavery and violence against our people that continues even until this day. Even if it's not as blatant, it works in the same way. When you look at institutions and the institutional racism, see, they don't have to sick dogs on us anymore. Even though they show us violence when they run us over with trucks. They show us violence when they pack us in prisons at astronomical rates for nonviolent drug crimes. They show us violence in so many ways. But it's institutional. And we are mad and blind and don't know how to get out of this situation. So many of our self-appointed leaders will stand up and give all these answers and start talking to make money. And then at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, you are in the same condition that you were in from the very beginning. Al Sharpton is not the answer. Jesse Jackson is not the answer. I'm calling names today. That is not the answer. That is not the answer. I know people want justice, but when you look at the problem as a whole, you have to look at what is the cause. What is the cause? And the cause is we have not been obedient to our God. So it says in verse 30, now I want you to listen to this. It says in verse 30, thou shalt betroth a wife, and another man shall lie with her. Thou shalt build an house, and thou shalt not dwell therein. Thou shalt plant a vineyard, and thou shalt not gather the grapes thereof. Now what does he mean? You're going to have a wife, and another man's going to lie with her. What does that mean? That means that you are going to have a wife in slavery, and another man is going to take her. Not sneak in the back door, but he's going to come through your front door, tell you to leave and have relations with your wife, and then get up and walk out. That's what's going to happen. And there's going to be no power in your hand. I want to read something to you from a book called Killing Black Innocents about this very thing. Give me one moment. I want to read something about this, because this is what happened wholesale in slavery to our people. This is what happened. This is, again, this is a book called Killing Black Innocents. I just want to read this to you. This is in chapter 1. Chapter 1 that is entitled Control of Reproduction During Slavery. And under here it says rape. It says, black female slaves were considered to be mere property and had little power to prevent the sexual advances of white male slave owners. The legal system did not protect the bondwoman from sexual assault. Thus, masters were able to commit heinous sexual acts with impunity. See, this is what happened. This is what happened. Slave children were also susceptible to rape by slave masters. Linda Brent described the experience of slave girls as follows. When she was 14 or 15, her owner or her sons or the overseer, or perhaps all of them, began to bribe her with presents. If she failed to accomplish their purpose, she is whipped or starved into submission to their will. See, this is what happened to our women. And our men had no might in their hand to do anything about it. To do anything about it meant death. So it said, thou shalt betroth a wife, and another man shall lie with her. Thou shalt build an house, and thou shalt not dwell therein. We built, who do you think built the slave big houses on the plantations? The big house on the plantation. We built those houses. Who built the White House? We built the White House. Who built the country? Who built this house? United States of America. We built it. We built it. We made it a treasure city just like Ramesses in Egypt. We built the country. The country was made strong and made a superpower off the last backs of our ancestors. We built the country. We made it what it was. Billions of tons of cotton picked. Free labor. This is what we did. And you see how we are treated today. Shot like dogs. You look at the many inventions that we came up with to make this country what it is. And they show us every day what they think. But it's not them. The problem is in our court. It is with us. See, we need to get ourselves right with God, and then they will have no power to do anything against us. They would have no power to do anything against us if we turn back to God, because all that has come upon us is a consequence of sin. Verse 32. Well, I'll skip back to verse 30 because it says, therein thou shalt plant a vineyard and shall not gather the grapes thereof. I mentioned all the agricultural work that we did in this country. It was not for us. Even when we were free, we worked as sharecroppers, and they cheated us out of so much money to where we were constantly in debt, could never get out of the cycle of debt. Cursed in the city, cursed in the field. You're going to plant and you're going to gather little in. You're working from sun up to sundown. Every day. Even as slaves, we work from sun up to sundown. And then, if you wanted to have some slaves, masters would allow you to have some little part where you could farm on the side if they did that much. If they did that much. See, that's our condition. Who fits this description? Is it us or is it someone else? Verse 32, thy sons and thy daughters shall be given unto another people, and thine eyes shall look and fare with longing for them all the day long, and there shall be no might in thine hand. So your children will be sold. Your children will be sold. I want to read something from another book called Enter Egypt Begin with Ships. Bear with me about that particular. I want to read about that particular situation of being sold. Your children being sold. Give me a second here. Give me a second here. Because this is what happened wholesale. This is what happened wholesale. This is Into Egypt Again with Ships, page 38 and 39. It says, thy sons and thy daughters shall be given unto another people, and thine eyes shall look and fare with longing for them all the day long, and there shall be no might in thine hand. It says, verse 39, this also occurred in a number of occasions as Israel was moved in and out of captivity. In America, which is our focus, children of slaves were sold at the financial impulse of the slave master. Consequently, families were often torn apart, many members never seeing their loved ones again. In the work Slavery and the Domestic Slave Trade in the United States, Professor Andrews' inquiry of a slave trader sheds light on verse 32. So we just read verse 32. This is Andrews. Do you buy the wife without the husband? So he's speaking to a slave trader. He asks him, do you buy the wife without the husband? Slave trader. Yes, very often and frequently too. They sell me the mother while they keep the children. I have often known them take away the infant from its mother's breast and keep it while they sold her. So you see here that this took place, that women were separated from their children, even from the mother's breast. It says, goes on further to say, in many instances, families were split for the purpose of establishing economic security for the children of slave owners, just as a trust fund would today. So we were a trust fund. We were a trust fund. Selling of children. You even had stock men in the South. Men who their whole job was to impregnate women. So that, slave women. So that, now these are black men who were of a great physical prowess. And they were used to impregnate women. And those children were used to make the slave master rich, and often they were sold. There were also instances in which some slave masters would pay college students to sleep with their slave women in order to produce children that could be sold. Often when you had slave masters who impregnated their slaves, like Thomas Jefferson and George Washington. They're examples of it. When the mistress of the house, in her embarrassment, would insist that those children be sold immediately. See, this is what happened to us. And the child was stripped from its mother. You see that same thing today in the prison system, in the juvenile courts. Children being stripped from their mother. But this is in the slavery in particular where you see it here. It says, thy sons and thy daughters shall be given unto another people, and thy eyes shall look and fare with longing for them all the day long, and there shall be no might in thine hand. See, those that call themselves Israel today, who are in the land today, they did not experience this. This is our experience. You want to know what it feels like to be black in America? Here it is. This is a so-called African American experience. Now let's skip down. In verse 36, the Lord shall bring thee and thy king which thou shalt set over thee unto a nation which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, and there thou shalt serve other gods, wood and stone. See, we had kings, brothers and sisters, but it wasn't the kings of Egypt. Rather, it was the kings of Israel, King David and Solomon, Josiah and Hezekiah. Those were our kings. Those were our kings. He says, he shall come into a nation which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, and thou shalt serve other gods, wood and stone. This is why we serve all these false gods. See, we were given this false religion of so-called Christianity that we have today. But that is false, and it is based on paganism. But that's what we have inherited from our slave master. He gave it to us in slavery. See, this is the continuation of our slavery, because we are enslaved mentally. We worship a Jesus that does not exist. We worship a Jesus, first of all, who was white. That is not accurate. The Bible describes him as having skin like it had been burned in the oven. And it said his feet like they were burned in an oven, like brass. And hair like wool. Who does that look like? That is the so-called, that's a black man. That's a black man. But yet, in all our churches, we had these pictures of this white man. But that's not the only way you worship a Jesus that didn't exist. Another Jesus, as Paul said, or another gospel. Because what we do is not found in the scriptures. In the commandments, for example, in the commandments it says, honor the Sabbath day and keep it holy. That's the seventh day of the week that was sanctified in Genesis 2 by God. It was set apart, the seventh day. And yet, what do? We go to church on Sunday. Easter's coming up. Matter of fact, today is Easter. And what is that? You look in an encyclopedia, it will tell you that Easter is a day that was based on the worship of a false fertility goddess, Astarte or Estra. This is why you have chicks and bunny rabbits, because they are known for their fertility. This is why you have children trying to find the egg, just like sperm tries to find the egg in the cycle of life. See, this is all about fertility. This is all about fertility. Just like Sunday is about sun worship, the day of the sun, Sol Invictus. See, we have inherited lies. We have gone after lies wholesale in our false worship. And on top of this false worship, we have the name of God on our lips and say, Lord, we love you. But it's obvious that there's a problem, because when you look in our community, you see church after church after church, sometimes 3 and 4 in a block, and yet the rest of the buildings are abandoned. You have robbery and rape right on the street and murder right on the street, and yet you have all these churches. Something is wrong. We are not asking the right questions. We are not asking the right questions. We are serving gods of wood and stone, and when we need to be serving the true and living God, we need to turn back to him. I'm going to get to that, but it says in verse 37, and thou shalt become an astonishment, a proverb and a byword among all nations, whither the Lord shall lead thee. What's an astonishment? People are astonished at us. They hate us. They can't understand why we are in the position that we are in. They can't understand it, and they look upon us with contempt. They look upon us and they despise us. It says we will be a byword. What's a byword? African American. That's a byword. We can go all the way back. We can go back to Negro. Negro is a color. Negro means black in Spanish and Portuguese. That does not identify people. That identifies a crayon. That is a color. So you got Negro, then you got colored. How are you being described in this way? So you got Negro, then you got colored, right? Then, as if you were painted or something. And then what do you have? You have black. Again, a color. Then what do you have? Afro-American and African-American. Now when you think about these terms, where do these terms come from? Let's look at the word African. Because people from that region do not even describe themselves in that way. They describe themselves according to the tribe or the country from which they come. The word Africa, more than likely, because there are several theories on this, but it doesn't describe us in the correct way. But more than likely it comes from Scipio Africanus, who defeated Hannibal in the Punic Wars. Hannibal was the great general, one of the greatest generals of all time, that was a leader in Carthage, northern Africa. And that is probably what the word Africa comes from. That's one theory. But it doesn't describe us either way. And then American. First of all, you're shown every day you're not a real American. When you have to continue to sign civil rights bills and voting rights bills, you're not an American. You're not an American. Never was and never will be. So when you look at the word America, where does that word come from? Amerigo Vespucci, an Italian who was one of the, he didn't discover America rather, but he is one of the Western explorers who is credited with coming to this land, because this land was populated by the indigenous tribes, the indigenous people of this hemisphere. Furthermore, you had even Africans, true Africans, who came here before the Europeans came here. But nevertheless, so you have two words. You are described based on words that derived from two Italians. That makes no sense. That makes no sense. Who are you? Who describes themselves by two continents anyway? Answer you, somebody from Europe. Who are you? Where are you from? I'm a German. I am Scottish. I am Irish. I am French. I am from the Czech Republic. I am Russian. I am a Pole. Okay? This is how they would describe themselves. Somebody from the so-called Middle East, with all that land was Africa as well, they would tell you, I am from Iraq. I am Persian, or I am from Iran. I am from Kuwait. They will tell you a country. We, on the other hand, we name a whole continent. I'm an African American, then a whole, man, you, listen, who fits these curses? We're going to get to why you don't know who you are. But it says, and I shall become an astonishment, a proverb, and a byword. So they talk about us, have all kind of jokes for us, proverb and a byword. That's why I get African American, Afro American, Negro, colored, coon, nigger. All these words. I can go on and on and on, but I won't. You are a byword and a proverb. So let's skip down. Verse 41, it says, thou shalt beget sons and daughters, but thou shalt not enjoy them, for they shall go into captivity. We read that. Verse 43, the stranger that is within thee shall get up above thee very high, and thou shalt come down very low. Even in our communities, people can move in and take control. How do they take control? They take economic control in our communities. A few of them, and they own all the stores. Koreans come in and own all the stores. Arabs come in and own all the stores. Mexicans will come in and take over. See, this is what whites will come in and take over. They've been doing that. See, this is what happens to us. Even other so-called minorities will come into our communities and take over the community. And then we'll displace you. We'll gentrify the community. You know what? We think this will look nice here. So these 1,000 people that have been living here for decades, now they have to move. See, this is what happens in our community. You have no power. The stranger can come in at any time and sell you rotten meat. Sell you things that have been on the shelves that has dust all over it, but you don't own anything. You don't have enough resources to shop. We can't even buy food. We can't even eat right. Why? Because we have all these deserts, right? We have all these places, these urban areas where we live, where there is no full service supermarket. And the one market that we have, all they're selling is Flaming Hots and rotten meat. So our diet is Flaming Hots and rotten meat. This is what happens to us. This is what happens to us. So the stranger comes in and he takes over. Verse 45, moreover, all these curses shall come upon thee and shall pursue thee and overtake thee till thou be destroyed. So all these curses are going to come upon you and you're going to be destroyed. It says, because thou hearkenest not unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to keep his commandments and his statutes which he command thee. See, it's all a consequence, not because the white man is superior, not because you are inferior, rather because you have sinned against God. This is why these curses are upon you. This is why in slavery your wife was taken and she was raped and there was nothing you can do about it. This is why your children in slavery were sold. This is why you're cursed in the city in Detroit and you're cursed in Atlanta. This is why your children are cursed, filling up jails, not graduating, dying in the street, cut down by bullets, stray bullets. Look at Chicago, you have little kids playing on the sidewalk, being cut down. That's all over the country. All over the country. Why? And what will happen? The mother will get on television in her grief and cry, and then the news will make a spectacle of it, and then what happens? Nothing. Nothing. Some other child is killed a month later or a day later, and then the view or the attention is off of that one child that just died and on to the next one. See, the news is about race, so they will show us in our despair, show us looking crazy. They control our image, and then go on to the next story. And then you have people get up, we're going to march, we're going to do this, listen, you need to focus on this word of God and find out what your problem actually is. It's not because, oh, we need a mentor program, or we need to vote, or we need our own banks. Listen, if you got right with God, all the other stuff will work itself out. He is the reason why what we're doing is not prospering. And yet you will go to a church and they will sell you dreams like a pimp does a prostitute. Will sell you dreams about a reality that is not reality. About your situation, will lie to you about your situation, and then take your money. See, we got a problem, and our problem is spiritual. And we don't have enough shepherds, enough pastors to teach the true, unadulterated, uncut word of God. That's why we are in the position that we're in. And he talk about these curses in verse 46. It says, and they shall be upon thee for a sign and for a wonder, and upon thy seed forever. See, the curse is a sign of who Israel is. See, all that happened to you in slavery and in Jim Crow and currently, all those things are a sign of who you are. These are a sign upon you, showing you that's Israel. Moses is telling us about our condition. He was a prophet. So let's skip down to verse 61 or 63 and get to the ultimate culmination of captivity. 63. And it shall come to pass that as the Lord rejoiced over you to do you good, he brought us into the land and to multiply you. So the Lord will rejoice over you to destroy you and to bring you to naught. And ye shall be plucked from off the land whither thou goest to possess it. So he said, just as it pleased the Lord to bring us into the promised land, he said in that same way, I'm going to kick you out of the land for your disobedience. Verse 64, and the Lord shall scatter thee among all people. See, that's why we're in Europe, we're in South America. Many of us went to Brazil than even the United States. We everywhere. We are everywhere scattered. And the Lord shall scatter thee among all people, from the one end of the earth even unto the other. And there thou shalt serve other gods, which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone. See, we didn't know the gods of Christmas and Easter. See, that wasn't our God. We kept the Passover, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, Pentecost, the memorial blowing of trumpets, the Day of Atonement, the Feast of Tabernacles, the weekly 7-day Sabbath. These are what we observe. The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Not just in name, because people use the name and then they give you paganism. But rather, we serve the true and living God. Verse 65. And among these nations thou shalt find no ease, neither shall the sole of thy foot have rest. But the Lord shall give thee there a trembling heart, and failing of eyes, and sorrow of mind. See, what we experience even until this day is an example of this. We have no peace. We have constant fear because we have no power, because our God has turned his back on us. And if we want him to fight for us, we need to turn back to him and be obedient unto him. But here we sit with no power whatsoever. Verse 66, and thy life shall hang in doubt before thee, and thou shalt fear day and night, and shall have none assurance of thy life. And that's how that's how it is for us. Even when you look back in the day, you had the Ku Klux Klan and these other groups that would bring terror to us. We would fear going out at night, and even during the day. The same thing it is today. What do you have? You have police. Anytime, how do you feel when police get behind you? How do you feel? Does your heart start fluttering? Why? Because you know you could be a victim. You could be a victim. You could be a victim. Why? Because you have no power. Do you think other people view the police as we view the police? Police in our communities are occupying forces. They are not there to protect the community. They are not there to protect the community. Even we are scared of our own children. Our children are the ones who keep us in, locking our doors at night. See, truth be told, we were a righteous people. We were a righteous people who were given the law and statutes and commandments of God. We shouldn't have in our communities one lock on our doors. Why? Because we should know how to treat each other because the Lord gave it to us. And that's why he punished us, because we didn't accept or adhere to or obey his word. And that's why we're living in a hell that we're living in today as a people. And see, we have been deceived because we have so many who want to aspire to be someone again who quote unquote made it. The Vernon Jordans, or again, as I stated, the Oprah Winfreys or the Bill Cosbys. The whole, for the most part, the masses of our people, even those who are educated, still living in hell. Still living in hell, quote unquote education. Because what you get even on a post-secondary level is a miseducation. I know it for a fact. I know it for a fact. Being educated myself, so-called educated myself, and having several degrees, I know for a fact you get a miseducation. I didn't educate myself in school. I didn't educate myself in school. I educated myself in a library. That's how I educated myself. Because you inherit lies. And I educated myself with the word of God. It is my meditation day and night. So verse 67, in the morning thou shalt say with God it were even, and at even thou shalt say with God it were morning. For the fear of thine heart wherewith thou shalt fear, and for the sight of thine eyes which thou shalt see. So you're going to have turmoil mentally, and there's nothing you're going to be able to do. And then I want you to pay attention. I want you to pay attention to what he says, and what's written in verse 68. Moses goes on to say, and the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee. Thou shalt see it no more again, and there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. Let's go to Exodus 13:3, because it says you're going to go into Egypt again. Now, we didn't go into Egypt again. Israel didn't go into Egypt again, literally. Let's show you what Egypt represents. This is Exodus, the 13th chapter. Exodus, the 13th chapter. And verse 3. And let's find out what Egypt was referred to as, and then we'll understand this verse. This is 13:3. And Moses, Exodus 13:3. And Moses said unto the people, remember this day in which he came out from Egypt, out of the house of bondage. See, we were slaves in Egypt for 430 years. That is the house of bondage. That's what Egypt represents. The house of bondage. It represents slavery. So when he says you're going to go into slavery or into Egypt by way of ships, he's talking about you going into bondage by way of ships, by way of slave ships, brothers and sisters. And I don't know if you can see this, but this is a diagram of Brooks' slave ship. Brooks' slave ship. See, that's how, as I stated earlier, that's how they did us. They put us on ships. Now you have to think about this. Who is this describing? Is this not your experience? Isn't this black in America? Isn't that what this is? I'm going to read it again. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee. Thou shalt see it no more again. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. So you're going to be taken into the house of bondage by way of slave ships. And in these lands, you're going to be sold as bondmen and bondwomen, and no man's going to buy you. Now, how are you sold and no man buys you? Brothers and sisters, nobody's going to redeem you from your condition. That's what it means by buy you. Nobody's going to save you out of your condition. Nobody's going to get you out of slavery. Some will say, we came out of slavery in 1865. No, rather, You were in slavery even after 1865. That's a whole other thing. You were in slavery, and then your owner just became the country. That's all it was. Because you never went home. You never were redeemed. See, redemption means getting back to the situation or the condition that you were prior to the wrong that was committed. See, if you're not giving back that land, if you're not giving true freedom, and you can't be given freedom, you take freedom. You take it. But you have not gone home. We have not gone home as a people. So we're still in the same country that we were in. Thus, you are captured. Someone said, well, you can leave. You could leave, and where would you go? First of all, others occupy and control your land. You can talk about going to Africa. They call you a nigger over there, too. That might mean I'm being real candid today. They call you a nigger over there, and they call you white over there. Yes, that's what they do. Because they are strangers. They understand that we are not the same people, and we are not the same people. We are not the same people. Even when you look at Barack Obama, his father was Kenyan, from Kenya. Your father was a slave. See, there's a difference. There's a difference. And he will tell you there is a difference. His constant ignoring of us is showing us there's a difference. You know, he's saying Al Green when it's convenient. He will have the audacity to come to black churches and black institutions, if you will, and will give speeches about responsibility. And yet he will totally ignore us and count on our vote. But he is not the same. As I said, this is showing you, you don't have any power. Even a man, a so-called man of color, will be in a position of power, and he's not the most powerful. Don't ever get that misconception. But he is in a position as the face of American empire, and you in a worse condition as you were when Bush was in office. Now you can't even say anything about race, and you won't say anything about race. See, a man, you can stop worrying about a man's color and worried about whether or not the man is righteous. That's why in the scripture when Israel had kings, because initially God was their king, but when they had kings, he told them, write the law, copy the law in a book and read it, because you have to be righteous. See, him being in that position has not affected your life. It has not affected your life. What happened? Gun sales went up. They went up. See, that is not our answer. Because you have a black man in power. On the slave plantations, we had black slave drivers. Who you think was whipping us? It wasn't just white overseers. It was slave drivers that were black. Just like the slave drivers in the days of Moses and in Egypt, who worked for Pharaoh. But it says in 68, and the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships by the way whereof I spake unto thee. Thou shalt see it no more again. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. No man is going to redeem you. Emancipation Proclamation didn't redeem you. Lincoln despised black people. He said with his own mouth that he did not believe blacks. He did not want the Negro to be on the same plane as a white man. He did not believe that. He wanted to use colonization to deal with the Negro problem. He wanted to get rid. Let me just read this. Let me just read again. This is from Killing Black Innocents. Give me a moment here to find this in this book about Lincoln and what he wanted to do with blacks. This is in 1867. This is his response to the Dred Scott decision. Okay, this is in the chapter "The Negro Problem and the Emergence of Eugenics." It says, this is Lincoln. He said, "Let us be brought to believe it," talking about colonization, "is morally right and at the same time favorable to, or at least not against our interest, to transfer the African to his native clime." Clime is talking about climate. "And we shall find a way to do it, however great the risk may be, task may be." So he wanted to get rid of you Negroes. He says, the children of Israel. Then he refers, this is the irony, he refers back to the children of Israel. What does he say? He said the children of Israel to such numbers as to include 400,000 fighting men went out of Egyptian bondage in a body. In one body. So that's the irony, because they're the same people. But he says, hey, just like they went out of the house of bondage as one people, let's send them out of this United States as one people. See, this is what he thought about you. That's what he thought about you. And the Emancipation Proclamation didn't free you. That's a whole nother thing. You need to read the book Forced into Glory. That's the book you need to read. I'll suggest that book that you read. But that has been our condition. That has been our condition. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships. By the way whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again, and there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. So Marcus Garvey and all his brilliance could not redeem you from your condition. What they do to him? They infiltrated his organization, brought bogus charges upon him, and then put him in prison, and then sent him away from here. Send him away from here. Same thing with W.E.B. Du Bois and all his brilliance and scholarship could not answer the problem. Booker T and his brilliance and self-reliance and perseverance did not have an answer to the problem. Who else? Who else? Martin Luther King, Malik El Shabazz, or Malcolm X did not have the solution to the problem in all their brilliance. And these were men, many of them were committed wholesale to the liberation of our people. But the problem is that they did not have the answer because they didn't know the problem. They didn't know the truth. They knew the symptoms. They knew the symptoms. They knew poverty, so they addressed poverty. They knew the symptoms, so many of them dealt with religion, but it is a spiritual problem, but the religion they dealt with was false. So you have to consider this. This is why we didn't have any real freedom. We have the illusion of freedom. Even until this day, we are still not free. We talking about I can go anywhere I want. Can you? I can go to any school I want to. I can go to work any job. Can you? Can you really? I mean, really consider that. What do you own? Where is your land? Who are you? Why don't you know who you are? Your name changes every so often. Every couple of generations you have a new name. Nobody else does that. That doesn't happen to anybody else. When you're filling out a survey, you have to figure out who you are. That's not anybody else's plight. That's our plight. Why don't we know who we are? Let's go to Deuteronomy, the 32nd chapter. To find out why we don't know who we are. Why we found out how we ended up here. Now, and these curses will be a sign and a wonder. Now, how is it that we don't know who we are? You press somebody that's a so-called African American, they will tell you, well, I don't know who I was. I can't tell you the country I was from. I'm a descendant of slaves. Let's find this out. This is Deuteronomy 32 and 26. It says, one verse, I said, I will scatter them into corners. I will make the remembrance of them to cease from among men. The remembrance of them to cease from among men. I'm going to scatter you in the four winds, north, south, east, and west, all over. And then I'm going to make the remembrance of you to cease from among men. So that's why you don't know who you are. Others don't know who you are, and you don't know who you are. Some do. Some do. And that's why they lie about it. Some do. They are very clear. They are very clear. But that's why you don't know who you are. And how do you explain others taking your name of Israel, calling themselves Israelis? How do you explain this? Let's go to Revelation and read this. This is Revelation. This is Revelation 2 and 9. Revelation 2 and 9, it reads as follows. I know thy works and tribulation and poverty, but thou art rich. Now he's talking to Israel here. He says, I know your works and your tribulation and your poverty, but thou art rich. How can you be impoverished and rich at the same time? You are impoverished economically. Materially, you are impoverished, but you are rich spiritually because the laws, the statutes, the commandments of God were given to Israel. So he says, I know thy works and tribulation and poverty, but thou art rich. That's why Paul says, what advantage does hath the Jew? Much chiefly in every way, for unto him were given the oracles of God. That's the true Jew. Who are a black people that have been scattered into slavery throughout all the world. Not the Mexicans, nobody, black people. Because you have that false doctrine out there. Israel is a black people that have been scattered into slavery all throughout the world. Now other nations can come into the commonwealth of Israel. Just like when Israel left Egypt, they left in a mixed multitude. Others realized that God is a true and living God. Okay? But that's why in Isaiah it's written, don't let the eunuch say, behold, I am a dry tree. He talks about the stranger having a name better than Israel, who takes hold of the covenant and honors the Sabbaths of the Lord. But he says, I know thy works in tribulation and poverty, but thou art rich, spiritually speaking. And he goes on to say, and I know the blasphemy of them which say they are Jews and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan. Who is that talking about? That's talking about the one who's claiming to be the Jew today. He says, I know the blasphemy of them that say they are Jews and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan. See? And this is not about hate towards any other people. This is just about the facts of the matter. We are the ones that fit the description of the curse. We are the ones who are living this condition day by day. Every day of our lives. We are the ones who don't even have a clue of who we are. That's us. Let's find out something else. Let's go to Isaiah. Isaiah the 42nd chapter. And let's read some more. And find ourselves in the scriptures. Find ourselves that's on the book on our shelf collecting dust that the minister won't read to us. Come up out of these churches. Isaiah the 42nd chapter. Isaiah the 42nd chapter. And he says something here about our blindness. He says it. He says, hear ye deaf. This is Isaiah 42 and 18. Hear ye deaf, and look ye blind, that you may see. Israel, hear, hearken unto the words. Open your eyes. Spiritually, open your ears. Spiritually, open your eyes. He says, who is blind but my servant? Talking about Israel, or deaf as my messenger that I sent. Who is blind is he that is perfect, and blind as the Lord's servant. Saying many things, but thou observest not. Opening the ears, but he heareth not. The Lord is well pleased for his righteousness' sake. He will magnify the law and make it honorable. But this is a people, talking about Israel, robbed and spoiled. Talking about us, we have been robbed and spoiled. It says, they are all of them snared in holes, and they are hid in prison houses. Who fills up the jails? Who fills up the jails? It's us. It's us. You should read a book, The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. Talks about how we have become, how we have a class, a permanent undercast of people, many men and women, black, who will be in a permanent or perpetual condition of poverty. Why? Because they have a felony. Now, you think about it. Blacks and whites use and sell drugs at the same rate. But who is targeted for that selling of drugs? Who is targeted for the purchasing of drugs? It is us. And who fills the jails? It is us. Why? Because the jails are used